picture this. You're a renter and you live in a place that's all white or, heaven forbid, all gray. But because you're a renter, you can't paint anything. You can't fundamentally change the essence of the space, but you really want a warm, cozy, welcoming home. What do? Welcome back to Armchair Rearranging, where you send in pictures of your spaces and I give you design advice for free. And today we are looking at Clara's apartment. Clara recently moved in and she just doesn't like how empty and cold it feels. And we're gonna help her out with some tips. So here's Clara's living room, and I'm gonna show you a picture of her dining room too. It's like all one big open space. Here's her dining room. I can see how Clara feels challenged to make this space feel warm and cozy when it's quite big, even though there is a lot of natural lighting. It doesn't have a lot of like character or anything going for it. Luckily, I have some ideas, and you can maybe apply them in your own house too. So when we're wanting to add warmth to a space, the first thing that we're gonna do is add texture. And this can be in the form of rugs, in the form of fabric, like curtains or throw pillows, or art. So let's look at a couple specific spots where Clara could add these things in. Starting with the living room area, I would get a bigger rug, and grays are not going to help right now in making the space feel warmer. I would get a rug that's like a maybe brown tone or something that's like earthy and like very grounding. This is such a big space. Clara definitely has the room to spread out in terms of her furniture. Now I would get a different sofa if that's in the budget, something that's maybe leather or something that's warmer feeling. But if that's not on the budget, you can add in some throw pillows in earthy tones and browns and creams, or maybe like a rust or like a mossy green if you're into those colors. And some throw blankets will help soften up the gray. Then I would take down that gray poster. The orientation and the colors aren't doing anything for this space. So I would get something that's bigger and rectangular shape. I think that this piece of art that Clara has in her dining room is a great example of when you want something to feel a little bit warmer, but you're also not trying to lean too much into the like super vintage style. So abstract art in warm tones, earth tones, is gonna be a great choice. Or if you're into leaning into the vibe a little bit more, I think tapestries are a great choice for the wall. Something that's like thick and woven, and that's gonna add a lot of character, and it's also going to absorb some sound and just make things feel a little cozier. So in terms of adding texture in the dining room, I think Claire's off to a pretty great start here. There are only minimal tweaks that I would make here. And one of those things would be to add a rug underneath the table if you feel so inclined. Sometimes rugs are just too much of a fuss under a dining table, I get it. But I think a nice rug could help. And also putting some like sheepskins or cushions or something on the chairs to soften up the edges of everything would be a great choice. And this is something that's definitely a bonus. It's not necessary, but if you wanted to really level up this space, I would consider getting some different curtains, again, in like a earthy tone, maybe something that would tie into whatever you choose for your throw pillows on your couch. Rule of thumb for curtains is you want to have double the amount of fabric of the width of your window. So say your window is 60 inches wide, you would want 120 inches of fabric, and that's really going to give that voluminous effect. You could even go more than that if you want the curtains to feel like nice and flowy when they're closed as well. And if you did go the curtain route, I would think about adding the curtains to go behind the TV as well. I know IKEA and I think Amazon sell some like track inserts for curtains that you can add up on the ceiling. So make a continuous line from what is already there, because that art back there I think could be better purposed somewhere else, and that shelf unit is not really doing much for me. So like adding a continuous line of curtains could make it feel really luxe. So the second thing that I would do in terms of making a space feel warmer and cozier is adding warm lighting. So we had texture, now we need lighting. In this living room area, those shelves, those gray ones, again, they're not doing much for me. I would consider taking those down and maybe hanging that piece of art up in that corner that was leaning up against by the TV, and then having some sort of nice hanging pendant come down from the corner. You could add a table back there as well with a table lamp, or you could do something hanging from the ceiling depending on how much space that you want to use up. And in the kitchen and dining area, I would add a little lamp to the end of the dining table. And also I love having tiny little lamps on a kitchen counter if you have enough space. That just gives it such a nice glow and homey feel. So we've talked about adding texture, we've talked about adding warmth in terms of lamps, and those are gonna be the easiest thing to do to warm up a space. The third thing that you can do is consider thoughtful furniture placement. And this is when it gets a little bit tricky, it can get a little bit more expensive, so that's why I saved this for last. When you have a big open space like this, something that's gonna make it feel colder is if you don't have defined areas for each part of the room. So I think adding 2 armchairs or a small love seat at the end of that living room area could kind of make it feel a little bit cozier and also provide some additional seating. And in terms of this wall here, that shelf and the globe bar cart feel a little awkward and out of place. So I have a suggestion. Again, this is something that's a little bit maybe more of a stretch goal, but we're dreaming big here. So I would consider getting a wall unit that's a little bit longer and has some more shelving. This then can double as your bar cart and your bookshelf. You can put a lot of things on there. It can also add a little entry drop zone when you come into the living room if you have keys or, whatever. And it also provides surface to add lamps. Again, I don't know what your stipulations are as a renter, if you can screw things into the wall or not, but a lot of times these wall units, can be standalone wall units. If you do go that wall unit route, I would just add another rug in front of it, add a little poof or something like that for comfy seating if you're wanting to sit there and look at books, or something that you can pull around for additional seating in your living room. I hope that was helpful. If you are also living in a space that feels cold to you but you're renting and you can't paint or do any of the things you might traditionally do to warm up a space, again, remember texture and adding warmth that way through curtains, through books, through throw pillows, through rugs. Those are all really easy additions to a space that can easily be taken down when you move. And then warm lighting. I say this all the time, but you cannot go wrong with warm lighting. It's one of the easiest ways to add a cozy feel. Scatter those lamps around, put them on every surface, go extra with the lamps. Have somebody walk in and be like, wow, there are a lot of lamps in here. But it's gonna make such a nice feel. And be thoughtful about furniture placement and creating zones, especially if you have an open plan space. Because if you are treating everything as a huge room, it's gonna feel cavernous and it's not gonna feel cozy. But instead, making small areas, enclosing in the living room with some chairs, adding a separate bar area, adding a dining area, for example, that's all gonna come together to make things feel really nice. Again, you are welcome to send in your own spaces. You can email them to me at carlottacisternas@gmail.com. Email is the best place to do this rather than DMs because things get lost in my DMs. So if you want me to take a look, email me and I will try to take a look.